Over 63,000 folks got GMRS licenses in 2023. Many of them are looking at their new radios and asking themselves, so how does this thing really work? If that's you, stick around. Recently, I've had several folks comment on some of my videos. Something to the effect that I'm assuming they know more about the radio I'm reviewing than they actually do. This is especially true when it comes to how to operate the thing. I have to admit that most of my radio reviews assume a basic level of understanding that allows the viewer to be able to make some sense of the radio features and capabilities that I usually call out in those reviews. It's clear that isn't always the case. Thus, the questions. As we get started, thanks for choosing this Gadget Talk video. On this channel, we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of electronic gadgets, including ones like this one on GMRS radios. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel and click the like button so YouTube will offer this video to others. I really appreciate it. In this video, we'll go through how to operate your new GMRS radio. This will include the radio's basic functions such as choosing what GMRS channel to use, how to program in privacy tones and why you'll seldom need to do that. We'll also show you how to use the GMRS repeater channels. As I said earlier, I'm targeting a GMRS radio novice. If you've been using GMRS for a while, you're probably already well aware of these topics. Let's get started. GMRS radios are designed to be easy to use right out of the box. Most radios will come with the GMRS channels assigned to the proper power levels, bandwidth, and with no privacy or CTCSS or DCS codes set. You should be able to take the radio out of the box, charge the battery, turn it on, set a channel, and talk. I'll use a couple of different GMRS radios in these demonstrations, but notice how similar they are. As you'll see, the items in the menu systems may have different numbers or slightly different names, but they all work pretty much the same. Let's start with a tour of the outside. So here we've got a couple of GMRS radios from a couple of different manufacturers and a couple of different models. So let's take a look at some of the things that you're going to need to know about, and you're going to see that they're very similar between models and between manufacturers. And so first, let's start on the front of the radios. We've got the speakers, which we can see we've got behind a grill here, and this one it's up on the top. Here it's a little more hidden in the middle, but they're all there with the speakers. And then the microphones are also on the faceplate. So you can see we've got one down here, here's up here, over here it's over there, up here, and then again over here. So all of those are going to be right there in front. And so you're going to use the radio by holding it 6 to 8 inches in front of your mouth when you do the press to talk, when you're making a transmission. Now, most radios will also have a keypad, and so you can see the keypads are here on each of these radios, and they have a couple of things that I want to point out to you. First, there are the numbers, and you can use the numbers to type in frequencies, and you can use the numbers to type in menu numbers when you're in the menu system. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then you can see that most of these have shortcut keys in a different color on the various menu items. So that means that if you were in the menu system and press 2, you'd be changing the transmitter power. And that's the same with these 3 radios, although they are different models and different manufacturers. This Retevis model has a different scheme, and it's got letters like you would find on a telephone instead of these menu shortcuts. The other thing we have in common in all but one of these radios are these 3 buttons. And so we've got a VFO or memory button. We've got that here in orange and orange. Here it's in black, VFO memory, VM, and that changes the register you're in if you've got both displayed from the VFO mode to the memory or channel mode. And so you're going to be thinking in terms of channels for GMRS, and so you'll spend most of your time in the channel mode. The other thing you have here is the AB switch. There's AB here, and AB allows you to make a change from the upper register to the lower register when we have those displayed, so you can change what you're transmitting on. So if you had two channels dialed in, say GMRS 5 and GMRS 15, you could switch between the two if you're in one of the modes that allows that. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes as well. Now, you'll notice that this radio is a little different. It doesn't have the AB or the VFO, and that's because they're using and doubling up the keys here. So a long press on the menu in this particular model will change from VFO to memory mode, and a long press on the exit, if you're not in the menu system, will change it from the upper register to the lower register. So the other thing, we've got up and down buttons, which allows you to cycle through the various menu settings if you're in menu mode, or through the channels if you are in channel mode. And again, if you're in channel mode, you can just type in the channel and it'll move to that channel for you. Now, all of these radios have LEDs on the front. Some of them are easier to see than others. We'll point to this Retevis, in that it'll show red when you're transmitting and green when it's receiving. Sometimes it's one LED with two colors. Other times it's like this with two different LEDs. So let's move now to the side. If we look at the side, we'll take a look at this Retevis, and these are all pretty much the same. So you've got a push-to-talk button, which you push to talk. It's nothing magic about that. And then there are two keys here that you can program in the software and sometimes in the menus to do different things. Normally, one will turn on the flashlight and one will turn on maybe the FM broadcast mode, for example. On the top of the radio, you have the on-off switch. All of these radios have on-off switches on the top. You've got an LED for a flashlight. Again, all of these have got LEDs on the top. Some have LEDs on the bottom, some models, but mostly you'll find them on the top. And then we'll change radios here for this part of the show and tell. And so you can see the antenna screws on with GMRS radios. Sometimes you'll find them kind of glued on, but most of the time, or if they transmit data, the antennas can't be removed. So a basic GMRS radio is going to have a removable antenna. This is called an SMA connector. We'll move that here to the front. And for most of the radios coming from China, you're going to see a little plug or spike in the middle of that. That's the male side. And so the antenna itself has got the socket side. When you put them together, they work. Now, different brands such as Oshan, sometimes you'll find them with those connections reversed. So if you're buying third-party antennas, before you order, make sure you understand what connection the antenna has. So as we stay with this Baofeng UV5G Plus, we can turn it over on the back. We see we've got a belt clip. Belt clips can either connect to the battery or to the radio. This one connects to the radio. It's also got a little flap over here, which allows you access to a USB-C charging port with a little LED indicator that gives you the charge status for the battery's charging. Occasionally, you will find USB-C slots in the side of the radio, but most of the time for these inexpensive radios, you're going to find the USB-C charging built into the radio itself. And in some cases, like this older UV5G or UV5X, you won't find USB charging at all, and you'll have to use the radio charge cradle, which these little tabs will fit into and allow you to charge the radio. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you is on the side of these radios, we've got what's called a K connector or a K1 connector. One of these is for the speaker, one of these is for the microphone, but normally if you have a speaker microphone, it's going to come with a K connector where that just plugs in, and that's the same as this programming cable, which I have right here. And so in that case, the programming cable plugs into your radio like this, and then this side of the programming cable has got a chip in this larger USB-A side of things, which will convert the signal, the audio signals coming from the radio, into a digital signal that your computer can use when you connect it to customer programming software. Again, we'll talk about it in a few minutes. So that's the basic tour of the outside of these radios and what a programming cable looks like. Now, let's turn the radio on and do a quick power on tour. We'll take a look at the buttons and what they do. So here we have two typical budget class. This is a Retevis GMRS radio. This is a TID radio H8. This one has got a color screen, and this one has got a monochrome screen. So we'll use these as exemplars between those two. So we'll turn the radio on, and you'll hear that it announces itself.
Welcome.
And then the same thing here for this Retevis radio.
Welcome. Channel mode.
And so it tells you the mode that it comes up with. This one just displays it. And so let's look at a couple of things. First, we obviously have the power on button here, the on-off switch. The number keys, in some cases, they're illuminated. Sometimes the keys are not. And so if we wanted to make a change to the channel, we could press the up button. 2. Or we could just type in the number if we wanted to go to like channel 15 instead of pressing the up button 15 times. It's a 3-digit numbers in this radio, so we'll go
0, 1, 5.
And now we're on GMRS channel 15, which you can see there, I hope, in the little box. So you've got the frequency 462.55, the channel is 015, and then you can see the channel name is GMRS 15 there in the box. So that's kind of the display. Now, in this radio, the display is a little bit more rudimentary. And so if we, again, want to change channels, we just go up
3.
Or down.
2.
Or, again, we can make a change and just go up to the channel we want. So, again,
1, 5.
And we can go up to channel 15 by hitting 015. And you can see over here that the radio is on channel 15. It's showing it there. Now, in terms of the VFO mode, if we press this button, we can go to VFO mode.
Frequency mode.
It tells you it's in frequency mode. It says VFO. And here you can make inputs. So if we wanted to set in a frequency
1, 4, 6, 5, 2, 0.
which is a ham general VHF call frequency, we can do that and we can put it in there. However, if we press the push to talk button, it's not going to transmit because we're not authorized to transmit, but we can do that. And so normally when you're saving memories, you're going to start in the VFO mode. Although, as we'll see when we look at the customer programming software, for my opinion, it's a lot easier to do that. Again, we want to get out of VFO mode. We just press the button again.
Channel mode.
And it takes us back to channel 15. Same thing here. Moves the radio to frequency mode. And again, you can use your keypad to make the changes. The other thing we can do is we can switch which of the two VFOs or two registers that the radio has. And we're going to use the AB button. So the upper register here is A and the lower is B. So if we press B, notice this little caret goes to the B. And now when we press the talk, it's going to transmit on B. This display is a little different, but essentially the same thing. There's a little green caret next to the words GMR S15 right here. And so if we press B, it moves there. And you can see that we move to what I have programmed in this radio, which is channel 55, something in the 151 megahertz range. And so that's what we've got here in terms of how those buttons work. Now, the other thing that we can do then is we can move into the menu systems, and we'll do it in both of these just to give you an idea how they work. So we can press menu. And so now you can see the menus there, and we can work our way up through the menus. This radio has like 42 menu items. Or we can press one of these buttons if we wanted to go to menu 5. We could just press 5, and that's the bandwidth, which is narrow and wide. And so this, on this particular channel, it's set to narrow. And then if I want to make a change, I could go press menu again, and then I could change it here using the buttons, press menu a third time to confirm it, and then exit, and now I'm back. Now, if I go to AB and go back to menus, and you can see that my menu is wide on this channel because a GMRS channel in this range has a wide bandwidth. So then I can press exit to leave. Here we do it the same way. We can go into menu. Here the screen goes to the full size for the menu, but it works the same way. So if we want to go up, we can go up through our steps, transmitter power, power on, Vox, all these kinds of things we can enter, and we do it the same way. Press menu again, press the numbers you want with the up and down screen. This is how long the menu stays active before it closes out. I want it for a minute, confirm it, and then I can exit, or I can continue going up and down through the menus. Most of these menus for the new person in GMRS are going to be just fine where you get them. Now, the other thing that I want to look at just briefly are the weather channels and FM broadcast, and that's going to vary from radio to radio. So let's take a look and see what we get here. I believe this one.
Los Angeles, today, mostly sunny. High 69. Tonight, partly cloudy early, then low.
That one was triggered by this lower programmable key. And then this one, I think if I remember right, turns on, yes, turns on the flashlight. This radio accesses those same features, but it uses different keystrokes. And so you're going to have to look at the radio that you happen to own to know how to move into broadcast FM and how to get to the weather channels. Most radios have those, however, all of them don't. Now, the other thing I want to show you here, and we'll expand it with a graphic here in just a second, but that is the various things that are on the screen. So on this TID radio, the screen's a little more complicated. It's got an RSSI, or radio signal strength indicator, at the top to show you how strong the signal is going in or out. It's got a little like wire coat hanger upside down there that shows the antenna, so it'll have a change in that when you transmit. The H means you're on high power. The W means you're on wide bandwidth for a GMRS channel. That, of course, is what you want. And then the battery indicator. Over here on this little radio, it says it's on high. It's got the battery indicator. So let's go up to one of the repeater channels and see if any of those displays change. So here we got repeater channel 23, and you can see there's a little plus indicator. And the plus indicator indicates that there's a positive offset programmed into the radio. GMRS radios come with all that automatically set. You don't have to worry about it, but that's just part of what you see in terms of the screen icons. So I mentioned the RSSI indicator. Usually there's a high and low power. You can sometimes see a circle with a D or a circle with a C. That means that your privacy codes, either the DCS or the CTCSS codes, are enabled. As we just discussed, the plus and minus show that there's an offset dialed in. Some radios allow you to listen to both the upper and lower frequency at the same time. That's often called dual watch. Sometimes it's called dual mode, but you might see a D on your display. Another icon you'll see is a padlock icon. That's used to lock the keyboard so that you don't bump and change the channel. You sometimes see a little text bubble on your radios. That means that VOX or Vox is enabled. Most of the time you're not going to want to mess with Vox. We've already pointed out the N and the W for narrow and wide band. Some will have an N for narrow and nothing for wide, or some might show both the W and the N. And then you can sometimes see an R, which means reverse function, which means that when you're in your repeater mode, if you've got someone you're speaking with who is within range, you can press that mode, and then your radio will switch what it transmits on. So you transmit on the receive and receive on the transmit, and so you can go directly to that person without tying up the repeater. So those are just a couple of the things that you'll want to be aware of in terms of screen icons on your radio. GMRS radios are required to be fairly locked down to gain FCC certification. That certification is required for sale and use in the United States. The reason for this is that you don't need any kind of radio knowledge to get a GMRS license or to use GMRS radios. So the FCC only allows you to change certain things. Those things don't include changing the frequencies on which the radio broadcasts, except, of course, the frequencies assigned to the 22 basic GMRS and the 8 additional GMRS repeater channels. Before we jump into the radios, one topic needs a bit more explanation. I've used the term privacy codes, CTCSS codes, and DCS codes already. CTCSS, or continuous tone-coded squelch, and DCS, or digital coded squelch, are two methods to accomplish what some manufacturers call privacy codes. For all practical purposes, think of them as the same thing. When you assign a privacy code to any channel, the radio squelch system will only open when it hears the low-frequency, subaudible tone embedded in the signal. If there's no tone, then you won't hear the transmission, if you have a tone set. Only transmissions with the tone you've set will break the squelch. This system allows you to only listen to the folks with the same code set as you do in their radios. The system does not prevent others from hearing your transmissions if they have the same code or no code set in their radios. My point here is that privacy codes really don't provide any privacy. They just limit who you hear on busy channels. So, let's take a look at the things you can change and why you might want to make those changes. So let's take a look at a couple of the menu settings that you might want to change. So let's start by going into our menu. And I pre-positioned this to menu 10 on this TID Radio H8 because it's the receive DCS. The receive DCS is the code that is going to be in your radio that decodes what you receive. And so to get that, we'll press the menu again, and then we can work through. So look at here, we've got 754I, and then we can go down 743I. Those are all the DCS codes, and there are a bunch of them, and so you may end up having to cycle through them. Here is 023N, which is normal. It's more than we want to talk about now, but that basically means normal and inverted, and most of the DCS codes you're going to run into are going to be normal. So we're going to go back to off because I don't want anything here, and we'll select that, and we'll go up to the next one. This is the receive CTCSS code. There aren't as many of those, but it works the same way. It goes up to 254.1 hertz, not kilohertz, but hertz, so it's fairly low frequency, and it starts down at 67. And so this is the CTCSS code that you're going to set for the signal that you want to receive. The next one is the transmitter DCS, and this is the input code for the repeater that you're trying to get, or if you're just going between you and your buddy, the code that he would have in his receive. This is the code that's associated with what you transmit, and they are the same codes. We go up one more, we've got the transmit CTCSS, and so again, they work the same way, the same codes. And this is the one that's going to be associated with the signal that you are transmitting. Next, let's go down to bandwidth. Now, as I mentioned, the bandwidth in GMRS for all but the interstitial channels is wide, and you can make that change here. You can go from wide to narrow. We want it wide. That's what we want. Now, the bandwidth settings are 25 kilohertz or 12.5 kilohertz. And what that means is that's the width of your signal. Now, FM is frequency modulated, so to code your voice, the signal modulates a little bit off the center frequency, and that's where the information lies, is in that modulation, as with AM, where the signal is narrower, but the amplitude of that signal is how the information is coded. And so the impact of having a narrow band when it should be wide, or talking with someone on FRS on a narrow band while you are using a wide band, because the channels are the same with GMRS, is simply that the reception or the signal won't be quite as robust. They're not going to be able to hear the full width of your 25 kilohertz signal, and you're going to hear more than the 12.5, and so it may sound a little more tinny to you and so it'll affect the signal. But if you have FRS radios for the kids, you're still going to be able to use them and understand each other just fine. So those are basic things that you might be wanting to change here in the menu system. Most of this stuff, however, you're not going to really want to worry with. The last item that we'll talk about is go up to that dual watch that we've been discussing. So we can go in here and we'll start going up till we find it. So here on this TID radio, it's called dual wait instead of dual watch. It's on menu number 7, and we can turn that off and on. And then this TID radio also has a setting called sync, and that is what allows both the channels to be displayed. So we'll go up to the sync menu here, and you can see sync on gives you the display that we see. Sync off will make it a much more simplified display. Here on this Retevis radio, we can see menu number 7, again the same number, but it's called something different, and they call it dual standby. And so in this case, dual standby is off, and so it wouldn't necessarily listen to both at the same time, or you can then, of course, turn it on, and it works the same.
Dual standby.
Go down to turn it on, go down again to turn it off. It just toggles between the two. And so again, whether you want to listen to them both or not is entirely up to you. And where you find them in the menu system may change a little bit numbers-wise, and as we've seen, the name may change a little bit, but they do the same thing. If you're a basic GMRS user, what we've covered here will get you started. You'll be able to communicate with family members, choose a common channel for a car caravan when traveling, stay in contact with the kids when camping or with others on an off-road driving excursion. Now, however, let's whet your appetite a little bit for a couple of more advanced features found on most newer GMRS radios. The first is do-it-yourself channels. In some larger cities, you may find GMRS repeaters on the same channel. If you want to use any of them without going into the radio's menus to change the CTCSS or DCS codes, you can set up duplicate repeater channels with different codes to make changing repeaters as easy as changing channels. This also applies to situations where you might want to set up repeaters in various cities that you frequently visit. I've got a separate video on using GMRS repeaters. I'll link it on the end card to this video and in the description. The second feature most new GMRS radios have is the ability to program in lots of non-GMRS frequencies into receive-only channels. This allows you to add channels for such things as ham radio repeaters, marine band channels, MERS channels, or even railroad frequencies. While GMRS channels are only in the UHF range, many GMRS radios include receivers that also cover the VHF band as well. Check your radio's specifications to see what frequency bands your radios cover. Again, to operate within the FCC's GMRS rules, a GMRS radio will only transmit on GMRS frequencies. Both of these features are much easier to do with what's called a customer programming software application. You connect the programming cable I showed you earlier to your computer, open the app, and enter the frequencies or privacy codes you want in the channels that you choose. I also have a separate video on using CPS to program your GMRS radio. Again, I'll also link that on the end card and in the description. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, be sure to like and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Join me over here to take a deeper dive into using GMRS repeaters and using a CPS to program your radio. Thanks for watching.